When you walk away from a toxic relationship, you don't just leave with memories. You leave with something heavier, something invisible, something that clings to you long after they're gone. Emotional debt. It's not financial, it's psychological. It's the weight of every unanswered question, every silent treatment, every time you gave and got nothing back. It's the exhaustion of always being the one to apologize first, the one to chase, the one to hold everything together while they pushed you away. And the cruel part is, you carry this debt as if it's yours, when in reality, it was theirs from the start. This is why, after dealing with a toxic partner, you feel drained in a way that no amount of rest seems to fix. It's why you replay conversations over and over, why you wonder if you were too much or not enough, why even months later, you feel heavy without knowing why. Because they didn't just mistreat you, they transferred their weight onto you, their guilt, their shame, their avoidance, their unresolved past. They dumped it into your hands and walked away lighter while you staggered under the load. That's emotional debt. And the longer you carry it, the more it eats away at your self-trust, your peace, and your strength. Stoic wisdom says we suffer more from imagination than reality. And emotional debt is the proof. You're not just suffering what happened, you're suffering the weight of what you've agreed to keep carrying. And until you see it clearly for what it is, you'll keep paying interest on a debt that was never yours. Emotional debt is what happens when you spend your love, your time, your patience, and your forgiveness without ever receiving balance in return. In a healthy connection, there's a natural exchange. Effort for effort, care for care, respect for respect. But with a toxic partner, that exchange doesn't exist. You give, they take. You explain, they deny. You forgive, they repeat. And every time you choose to push past the discomfort, every time you silence your own needs to keep the bond alive, you're spending emotional currency. The problem is you're never replenished. Instead of being poured back into, you walk away more drained than before. Over time, that deficit becomes so deep that you don't even feel like yourself anymore. You feel smaller, weaker, like you're constantly running on empty. This is why toxic relationships feel so exhausting. You're not just dealing with arguments or misunderstandings. You're carrying an unbalanced ledger in your soul. You're taking on not just your own weight, but theirs too. Their inability to regulate, their refusal to take accountability, their constant shifting of blame, all of that gets transferred to you. And instead of realizing it doesn't belong to you, you take responsibility for it. You chase harder, you explain more, you bend further. And in doing so, you dig yourself deeper into debt. Stoic wisdom says, if you don't know what belongs to you, you'll be enslaved by what doesn't. That's the essence of emotional debt. It's not your mistakes you're carrying, it's theirs. But because you cared, because you hoped, because you wanted to make it work, you volunteered to take on a weight you were never meant to hold. And the longer you carry it, the more you confuse it with who you are. That's why emotional debt doesn't just drain you, it distorts you. It makes you believe you're weak when really you're just tired of paying for someone else's chaos. Toxic partners rarely come out and say, "Here, carry my weight." Instead, they create conditions where you end up carrying it without realizing it. One of their favorite tools is guilt tripping. They'll flip the script so that your needs become selfish, your boundaries become accusations, and your pain becomes a burden. You ask for clarity, and suddenly you're too demanding. You express hurt, and suddenly you're too sensitive. Over time, you start apologizing not for what you did wrong, but for even daring to feel. That's the first way emotional debt builds. You begin to pay for their inability to meet you halfway. Another way is through ghosting and silence. Instead of resolving conflict, they withdraw, they vanish, they ignore. And because silence is uncomfortable, you step in to fill it. You send the texts, you make the calls, you chase the closure. In doing so, you take on the responsibility for reconnecting every time they disconnect. They create the gap, and you pay the toll to bridge it. That's emotional debt. Then there's manipulation and rewriting reality. They'll deny things they said, twist your words, or minimize what happened until you start questioning your own perception. And once you doubt yourself, you lean on them to make sense of things. That's how the debt doubles. Not only are you carrying your emotions, you're carrying the burden of proving reality itself. And let's not forget the hot and cold cycle. One day they're warm, attentive, and drawing you close. The next, they're cold, distant, and punishing you with withdrawal. Each cold phase creates fear. Fear of losing them, fear of what you did wrong, and that fear drives you to invest even more reassurance, more effort, more sacrifice. They don't even need to demand it. You pay it willingly just to restore what they broke. This is how toxic partners operate. They don't carry their guilt, their avoidance, or their responsibility. They offload it onto you. And because you care, you carry it. You become the one doing the work, apologizing first, fixing what they shattered, and explaining until you're hoarse. That's emotional debt. You're constantly making payments on an account that only they benefit from, while your peace gets drained dry. Stoic wisdom says, "He who blames others loses the power to change. He who blames himself learns, but he who blames neither sees clearly." Toxic partners live in the first category, blaming others, deflecting, and staying blind. That's why the debt always shifts to you, because they've decided they'll never carry it themselves. The damage toxic partners leave behind isn't just in the fights you remember, it's in the quiet hours when you're alone with your thoughts. Emotional debt seeps into your daily life like an invisible tax on your peace. You lie awake at night replaying conversations, wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you could have done more, if you were ever enough. That mental loop isn't random. It's the cost of carrying their unfinished business. Every silence you filled, every apology you made on their behalf, every ounce of effort you gave without return sits in you as unpaid weight. This is why even after they're gone, you can still feel broken. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your mind never rests. You second-guess yourself in new relationships, afraid of repeating mistakes. You question your worth in quiet moments, haunted by the feeling that if someone didn't stay, it must be because you lacked something. That isn't truth. That's debt talking. You're carrying their guilt, their avoidance, their refusal to take accountability and mistaking it for your own. And here's the most dangerous cost: self-doubt. Toxic partners are experts at making you mistrust your own judgment. They'll twist reality until you believe you're overreacting, too emotional, or even unstable. That doubt doesn't just affect how you see them. It rewires how you see yourself. Suddenly, you're hesitant to trust your instincts. You second-guess decisions you once made easily. And in that hesitation, life passes you by. Emotional debt doesn't just weigh you down. It steals momentum, it kills confidence, and it traps you in a cycle of hesitation long after the relationship is over. Stoic wisdom says, "If you carry what is not yours, you will collapse under the weight." That's the trap of emotional debt. You think you're carrying your share, but you're really carrying theirs. And until you see it clearly for what it is, you'll keep paying interest in the form of sleepless nights, wasted energy, and a fractured sense of self. If emotional debt feels so heavy, why do people keep carrying it? Why don't they just drop it and walk away? The answer lies in psychology, because toxic partners condition you to believe the debt is yours. From the start, they train you to take responsibility for their moods, their actions, and their silence. When they withdraw, you chase. When they blame, you apologize. When they distort reality, you explain harder. Over time, your nervous system learns a dangerous lesson. If I just try harder, maybe things will balance out. That's how they trap you. You mistake their weight for yours, and before you know it, you're carrying their guilt, their shame, their avoidance, and calling it love. The other reason is hope. Deep down, you hold on to the illusion that one day all of your effort will pay off, that if you keep making payments on this emotional debt, one day they'll finally change, appreciate you, and give you back everything you poured in. But here's the truth. Toxic partners never pay their debts. They live off others carrying it for them. And as long as you stay in the cycle, you'll keep paying interest with your peace, your confidence, and your self-worth. This is where the shift has to happen. You can't keep waiting for them to change. You can't keep spending yourself into emptiness. You need a blueprint, to recognize the patterns and break them, a way to put the debt down for good. And that's why I created Surviving the Toxic Bond, now available as an audiobook and ebook. The audiobook especially is powerful because you can take it with you anywhere, in your car, on a walk, or even in those moments when the urge to chase creeps in. It keeps your mind anchored in clarity when your emotions want to drag you back. The ebook gives you something you can study, highlight, and reflect on. Some people use both together, listening while they read, to really let the lessons sink in. If you've ever felt like you can't let go, like you're still carrying weight that isn't yours, this guide was built for you. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Because here's the reality. The debt will never be paid by them. The only way out is to stop carrying what was never yours. And once you put it down, you'll realize the weight you thought was permanent was just borrowed pain, disguised as love. Once you see emotional debt for what it is, the next question is, how do you stop paying? And the answer isn't complicated, but it's brutally difficult. You stop carrying it by refusing to engage in the same transactions that created it. That means silence when they bait you into arguments. That means detachment when they ghost you and expect you to chase. That means holding your ground when guilt-tripping tempts you to apologize just to smooth things over. Silence and detachment feel cold, even unnatural at first, especially if you're used to being the one who fixes things. But in reality, they're the only moves that close the account. Every time you react, every time you explain, every time you chase, you make another payment into debt that isn't yours. And the more you do it, the deeper you go. Toxic partners rely on your discomfort with silence. They know that if they disappear long enough, your anxiety will force you to reach out. They know that if they twist reality, your desperation for clarity will drive you to explain. And they know that if they guilt-trip you enough, your empathy will compel you to cave. This is the system. They create the imbalance, and you pay to restore it. Silence breaks that system. Detachment refuses to restore it at all. When you stop reacting, the weight stays with them, and for the first time they're forced to carry their own debt. It's not easy. Your nervous system will crave the old cycle because it feels like relief, but chasing is false relief. It soothes you in the moment, only to leave you emptier after. Silence is different. Silence feels painful at first because it forces you to sit with your own cravings, your own fears. But as you endure it, the power shifts. You start realizing you're not crumbling without them. You're getting stronger. You're building proof that you can survive without carrying someone else's chaos. That's how debt is dissolved, not by collecting what they owe, but by refusing to keep paying into it. Stoic wisdom says, freedom is found in discipline. Silence and detachment are the discipline you need to reclaim your freedom. They're not about punishing the other person. They're about freeing yourself from a debt you never owed in the first place. And the moment you stop paying, you'll feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Lightness. Emotional debt feels real because you've been living under it. But here's the truth. Debt only exists if you agree to carry it. A toxic partner can throw guilt, shame, blame, and silence at you all day, but unless you pick it up, it cannot weigh you down. The problem is, when you care, you pick it up automatically. You feel responsible for their moods, their actions, their failures. You carry what was never yours, believing that by doing so, you'll finally earn peace. But Stoic wisdom teaches that peace never comes from controlling what isn't yours. It comes from refusing to hold it in the first place. Think about it. When they ghost you, what do? If you chase, you've agreed to carry their avoidance. When they guilt-trip you and you apologize, you've agreed to carry their lack of accountability. When they twist reality and you exhaust yourself trying to prove the truth, you've agreed to carry their lies. None of that was yours. You volunteered for it. And that's the bitter truth. Emotional debt is self-chosen. You can't control that they create it, but you can absolutely control whether you pick it up. The Stoic approach is to draw a hard line between what belongs to you and what doesn't. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, those are yours. Their moods, their silence, their projections, Those are not. The moment you internalize this, the game ends. They can ghost, but you don't chase. They can guilt trip, but you don't bend. They can distort, but you don't explain. Their chaos stays with them because you finally stopped volunteering to be their mule. And here's the paradox. When you refuse to carry their debt, two things happen. First, you feel lighter almost instantly because you've removed the invisible weight that's been crushing you. Second, they're left with their own mess for the first time. The guilt they've been running from, the shame they've been deflecting, the accountability they've avoided. It comes back to them because you're no longer absorbing it. That's when you realize emotional debt was never yours to begin with. You just signed up to carry it. And once you stop, you don't just free yourself, you expose them to themselves. Stoic wisdom says, what weighs you down is not the world, but the load you choose to carry. Emotional debt is nothing more than someone else's baggage. The day you refuse to lift it, you begin to reclaim your peace. The beauty of surviving emotional debt is that once you put it down, you realize something powerful. The very weight that once crushed you can become the training that sharpens you. Every sleepless night, every moment of chasing, every time you gave more than you should, those weren't just losses, they were lessons. You learned what it feels like to carry too much, and that memory becomes your compass. The next time someone tries to shift their weight onto you, you'll recognize it instantly. The guilt trips won't land the same, the silence won't sting as much, the manipulation won't confuse you because you've already lived through it and seen how it works. That is how debt transforms, not into bitterness, but into boundaries. Think about it. If you never felt drained, you wouldn't know the value of peace. If you never lost yourself in chasing, you wouldn't know the importance of staying centered. If you never carried someone else's chaos, you wouldn't know how to protect your own calm. The debt you carried becomes the reason you now guard your energy so fiercely. It becomes the proof that you can survive being broken down and still stand tall. And that kind of proof is priceless. This is why emotional debt can actually be turned into power. It forces you to see the truth about people, to separate words from actions, and to stop settling for half-effort connections. It teaches you that your energy is currency, and the only ones who deserve it are those who return it. Toxic partners never intended to strengthen you, but by trying to break you, they gave you the chance to rebuild stronger than before. Stoic wisdom says, the obstacle becomes the way. Emotional debt is that obstacle. Once you stop carrying it, you see it for what it was. Training. It tested you, it hurt you, but it refined you. And now, instead of being crushed by it, you carry the strength of knowing you'll never make those same payments again. The final step isn't just putting down the debt you've been carrying. It's building a life where you never pick it up again. Toxic partners thrive on finding people who will absorb their weight, but once you've seen the game, you don't play it twice. A debt-free future means learning to recognize the early red flags, when someone deflects blame instead of owning it, when silence is used as punishment instead of reflection, when affection is conditional instead of steady. These are the signals of someone already preparing to shift their load onto you, and this time, you'll know better. You'll know that the moment you accept that weight, you've signed yourself up for exhaustion that will never be repaid. Living debt-free also means mastering your relationship with yourself. The strongest shield is self-respect, because when you respect your own limits, you refuse to break them for anyone. That means no more apologizing just to keep the peace, no more over-explaining just to be understood, no more chasing just to feel valued. Instead, you hold your ground. You let silence sit. You let people show you who they are, and when they reveal that they will drain you, you walk away before the debt begins. That's not coldness, that's clarity. And here's the truth. Once you stop carrying others' weight, your life becomes lighter in every sense. Your mind is clearer. Your body feels less heavy. Your spirit has room to grow again. Suddenly the future feels possible because you're no longer dragging the past behind you. Relationships feel safer because you know you can protect your energy. And peace stops being a dream and starts being your normal state. Stoic wisdom says, freedom is not achieved by fulfilling every desire, but by removing the chains you placed on yourself. Emotional debt is one of those chains. Once you refuse to carry it, you're free. Free to choose, free to breathe, free to live without the invisible weight that once defined you. That is what a debt-free future looks like. Strength, clarity, and peace that no one can take away. If there's one truth I want you to carry from this, it's that you were never weak. You were just weighed down by a load that was never yours. Emotional debt tricks you into believing you're broken, when in reality, you were exhausted from carrying someone else's guilt, someone else's chaos, someone else's avoidance. The moment you put that weight down, you remember who you were before it. You remember how light peace feels, and you realize you don't need to spend another second paying for someone else's choices. And remember, if you're serious about dropping that weight for good, Surviving the Toxic Bond is there for you. The audiobook is perfect when you need steady guidance in your ear, and the ebook gives you something to study and reflect on at your own pace. If you want these lessons to truly sink in, use them together. The links are in the description and pinned comment. If this message hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Like the video so more people can find it. Share your story in the comments. You never know who will see it and feel less alone because of your words. Subscribe for more lessons and share this with someone who's still carrying debt they don't deserve. Sometimes the right perspective delivered at the right time is all it takes to help someone finally let go. Always remember, you don't owe anyone your peace, your energy, or your sanity. Stop carrying what isn't yours. The weight was never a reflection of your weakness. It was a sign of your strength. And now, that strength can finally be used to protect your own peace.